Hello there, my name is Brandon Wood and the game I am presenting is called Katadikase. Katadikase is going to be a first-person puzzle horror game with RPG elements. In this single playthrough game, the player will be a prisoner of King Minos thrown into the labyrinth with the dreaded Minotaur. The Minotaur will be the major antagonizing force for the game. The goal of the player is to get to the center of the labyrinth by traveling through all 4 different quadrants. In the center, the player will find a sword where he or she will be able to defeat the Minotaur. After defeating the Minotaur, if the player has collected enough feathers, there will be a cutscene for the player melting hooves into glue and using the glue and the feathers to make wings to fly out of the labyrinth. Throughout the labyrinth, there will be feathers for the player to pick up for the finale of the game. In addition, every section of the maze, excluding the first quadrant, will have an item that the player will be able to pick up to use throughout the journey that will be able to help him or her against the Minotaur. These items include an ancient Greek artifact that allows the player to be able to see just above him or her to have a better view of the maze. Also sandals to allow the player to move faster, a shield that will be able to stun the Minotaur if the Minotaur charges, and finally at the center of the maze will be the sword used to kill the Minotaur. The major thing that is going to be the most interesting to the player is going to be the reinforcement of horror, where the player will always be running from the Minotaur. The Minotaur's maximum speed will never exceed the player's minimum speed, no matter what state, whether it be sprinting or walking, that the player is in. However, there will be an interesting mechanic where the closer the Minotaur gets to the player, the faster the Minotaur will become. And vice versa, where if the Minotaur is further away from the player, the Minotaur will be slower. This mechanic should allow the player enough time to make decisions on which direction to go when coming to a crossroads, or in the interaction of a dead end, the player will be able to catch up. One major note, the Minotaur will never stop moving, so if the player stops moving, the Minotaur will go at its minimum speed and start to speed up the closer it gets to the player. Another major mechanic that is going to allow the player to stay interested in the game is the fact that he or she will be able to pick up items. And the player will be able to later pick up sandals that will allow the player to start sprinting and solve the puzzles or the labyrinth even further or quicker. And in the last 2 items, the player will be able to have a permanent shield and a sword in order to fight the Minotaur head to head. And the final major mechanic that keeps players interested is going to be the feathers. This mechanic is going to appeal to those who like to collect items. At the very end of the game, the player will not need to have collected all of the feathers in order to win, but only a certain amount. However, for those who like to collect everything, if the player kills the Minotaur and has collected all the feathers, then there will actually be a replacement cutscene that will be unique to having collected everything to have a second ending to the story. Katadikase resembles 2 major components of 2 major games. In the game Slenderman, Katadikase resembles the feeling of being chased at all times, and in Spyro there is that feeling of being able to collect something. The major difference is that Katadikase, in the term of Slenderman, you can actually kill the antagonist. And also in Spyro, in Katadikase, you don't need to collect everything in order to move on. You only have to collect but so much in order to do it, but if you collect everything, then it will allow more to the story. The major risks in developing Katadikase is going to be animating the Minotaur and the player, also creating the art assets and being able to help navigate the player through colors and lighting, and finally the cutscenes in the very beginning of the game and the cutscenes at the very end of the game. Thank you for watching my pitch on Katadikase.